Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're going to absolutely shatter everything you thought you knew about how tiny, seemingly insignificant actions actually shape our massive, interconnected world. We're looking really closely at two fascinating ideas: the butterfly effect and the snowball effect. We'll break down what they actually are, how they fundamentally differ from each other, and most importantly, how wrapping your head around these concepts can completely change the way you view history, your daily habits, and honestly, your whole future.
You know the pop culture cliche, right? Can a single butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon actually cause a hurricane in Texas? We see this trope everywhere. It kind of suggests that we can somehow track or even manipulate these tiny little causes to our advantage. The whole idea implies this neat, direct chain of events that we can just follow backwards, like breadcrumbs, from a massive storm right down to a tiny bug. But, well, as you'll see in just a minute, that is really not how the universe works.
General Stanley McChrystal actually hit the nail on the head with this one. He points out that we often mistakenly treat the butterfly effect like a predictable lever that we can just pull. We tend to think, hey, if I just do this one tiny specific thing, I'll definitely get this massive specific result. But by treating it like a tool for leverage, we are completely missing the actual science of chaos. The reality is, small things in a complex system might have zero effect, or they might have a massive one, and it's virtually impossible to know which way it's going to go ahead of time.
Take a look at this concept. The Boston Globe highlighted how movies, the one starring Ashton Kutcher, or Ray Bradbury's famous time travel story, A Sound of Thunder, falsely suggest we can just neatly trace back massive world-altering events to one single controllable action. They portrayed the butterfly as a direct cause. And sure, that is a super convenient plot device for Hollywood blockbusters, but it completely misrepresents the core scientific concept behind actual chaos theory.
So to get to the truth, we really have to look all the way back to 1961. Picture this. MIT meteorologist Edward Lorenz is about to literally change science forever. He was running a weather simulation on this early, clunky computer. To save a little time, he decided to start the sequence right in the middle, typed in the numbers from a printout, and then just went to grab a mundane cup of coffee. Well, when he came back an hour later, he was absolutely stunned by what he saw. The exact cause of his shock? It came down to a single, tiny keystroke. You see, to save paper, his printout only displayed 3 decimal places. So he had inadvertently rounded a number from 0.506127 down to just 0.506. That's it. That tiny, practically invisible difference, which is roughly the scale of a butterfly's flap, resulted in a completely unrecognizable, wildly divergent weather pattern. He hadn't found a computer bug, he'd literally discovered a fundamental property of our universe.
And this proves that the butterfly effect is not about leverage or, dominoes neatly falling in a straight line. In science, it's formally known as sensitive dependence on initial conditions. Basically, this means a tiny nudge doesn't directly build a massive storm. Instead, it pushes a highly complex system onto a completely different, totally unpredictable path.
This whole phenomenon creates what mathematicians call the Lorenz attractor. It essentially gives a mathematical face to chaos theory, showing us that even if the universe follows strict, deterministic laws of cause and effect, its extreme sensitivity to starting conditions makes long-term forecasting practically impossible. It looks completely random to us on the surface, even if, deep down, there really is a hidden order. So the really crucial takeaway here is that the butterfly effect represents a world of infinite possibility and nonlinear chaos. A tiny disturbance doesn't somehow power a tornado. It simply changes the starting point of the entire system. And honestly, it tells us a pretty humbling truth. In highly complex environments, like global weather or the global economy, we just cannot perfectly predict or control the outcomes of our actions. No matter how hard we try, it's just not happening. But wait a second. If the butterfly effect is a chaotic hurricane that we can't predict, we've got to ask ourselves about the forces we actually can predict and control. Because while the atmosphere is pure chaos, not every single system behaves that way. So what exactly happens when a small action isn't just lost in the chaos, but instead gathers measurable directional force? That brings us right to our second phenomenon, the snowball effect. Now, this is a completely different physical and psychological process. Just think of an actual snowball rolling down a snowy hill. It starts out tiny, right? But through an exacerbating feedback loop, it picks up more snow, more mass, and way more speed. A small action predictably compounds in momentum, growing larger and more impactful at a faster and faster rate. Let's map out a classic real-world example, the negative psychological snowball. We've all been there. You sleep through your alarm. That means you missed the bus. Now you're late, so your boss yells at you.
Because of that, your mood absolutely plummets. You can't think clearly, and your work quality just completely tanks for the rest of the day. One small, identifiable event predictably triggered a compounding chain of negative consequences.
And here's the thing, this negative momentum is often drastically accelerated by unhelpful thinking patterns right inside our own minds. I'm talking about things like jumping to conclusions or using mental filters that completely block out any positives while forcing you to fixate only on the negatives. This kind of all-or-nothing thinking traps you in a vicious cycle of anxiety. It basically makes that psychological snowball roll faster and grow heavier with every passing minute.
But here is the good news. Unlike the unpredictable global weather, you can actually stop this freight train of negative momentum. The real key here is to actively catch those thoughts and just say out loud, okay, I am feeling anxious. You have to consciously regain your objective perspective, stubbornly stick to your daily routine so you don't isolate yourself, and whatever you do, prioritize your basic needs. Get some good sleep, get some exercise. You literally have the power to melt that snowball. Conversely, you can totally flip this script because the snowball effect is also an incredible tool for positive self-improvement. Think about it. Instead of trying to run a full marathon on day one, which, let's be honest, just leads to burnout and failure, you harness a positive snowball. You start with small, consistent, highly manageable training choices. Over weeks and months, those tiny actions predictably compound into massive, life-changing results. So when we put these two concepts head-to-head, the difference is pretty staggering. The butterfly effect governs complex, macro systems. It's the unpredictable, nonlinear chaos of our massively interconnected world. The snowball effect, on the other hand, governs direct cause and effect systems. It's predictable, momentum-driven, and thrives on compounding returns. And honestly, mixing these two up is exactly where humans tend to make our biggest mistakes.
And speaking of massive mistakes, the brilliant mathematician Benoit Mandelbrot famously pointed out that devastating events, like the 2008 financial crash, happen precisely because overconfident Wall Street bankers rely on those predictable linear snowball models. They genuinely thought they could perfectly forecast compounding returns, completely ignoring the fact that global economics is actually a chaotic, butterfly effect world. They believed a crash was literally impossible, but as we know, in a highly complex system, one tiny unseen disturbance can topple the whole shebang.
However, if we zoom into a micro level in daily business, you absolutely can use the snowball effect to your massive advantage. A small act, say just smiling at a customer at your local lemonade stand, can trigger real word of mouth. That customer tells a friend, who tells the mayor, who mentions it in a town speech. That small action predictably gathers momentum over time, eventually building a thriving, self-sustaining enterprise.
So what does this all mean for us? Well, here is your big takeaway. We simply cannot perfectly control the chaotic butterfly effect outcomes of our deeply interconnected world. It's out of our hands. But we absolutely do have complete control over our own habits and the positive snowball momentum that we choose to build. Knowing that, it leaves us with one pretty powerful question to think about. What small, deliberate snowball are you going to start rolling today?